everybody have a Bible? We're going to do maybe a little bit, not that we don't study the Bible other times, but just, and I am moving to where I got a little bit of light because I'm blind enough as it is. That'll work. Good. So, we're going to watch a video clip here of a movie probably most of you have seen. In fact, we're going to watch a couple of different clips throughout my talk tonight, and it's from the movie Miracle. Those of you, most everybody's seen that, or at least parts of it. It's, again, kind of a summary story of great movie, in fact. Walt Disney did it about the 1980 Winter Olympic Games when the United States won the gold medal in hockey, ice hockey. And to set that up a little bit, just so that as you kind of see one of this early scenes that we are going to watch, basically what happened is that here we are in 1980, America's kind of in turmoil between the Vietnam War and Watergate and all sorts of dissension, and the Russians had just gone into Afghanistan, and there's lots of stuff going on. On top of all that, the Americans had not beaten the Soviet Union in ice hockey since like 1960. So, 20 years. In fact, that Russian team that had been put together had not been challenged internationally. Most of them had played together by the time 1980 rolled around for some of them 10, 15, almost 20 years together. So they were seasoned veterans. Then the other thing that you need to know is this was in the day and age that seems like a long time ago now, where they actually used, in America anyway, true amateurs in the Olympics. So you had these 19 to 22-year-old kids that were probably in or just out of college playing college hockey. And what's interesting, again, kind of as a what you need to know as we kind of move forward to the night, is that Herb Brooks is the coach. He was the coach of the University of Minnesota. He was handpicked by a committee. He came down and he was going to do things his way. And one of the things that he did was that he handpicked the 23, I think, guys that they basically made up their roster, which then dwindled down to 20 by the time the Olympics came. But he handpicked these guys for specific reasons. They brought specific talents to the table. They had specific skill sets. They may not have been the best hockey player per se, but in the scheme of things and the way he was going to put this team together, it was the only way that it could be done in order for them to beat the Soviet Union. And as they started, these kids had all sorts of grievances with each other. If you've ever seen the movie, they came from competing schools, and in fact, some of them outright hated each other because of the competition that they'd had through their collegiate years and probably some other years. So as they start this practicing process of trying to develop a team and developing where they were going to go to try to accomplish this huge goal of even competing with, they couldn't even dream of beating the Russians, quite honestly. But he would start out and do these practices after two of them had gotten into a squabble, where he would ask, "Who are you? And where are you from? And what team do you play for?" Basically was what they would do. And he would just handpick different guys on occasion throughout some of this practice time to do that. So you're going to see a little bit later on at the end of this first clip kind of where things have gone. So I'm going to have us just watch. It's about 4 or 5 minutes. Some of you have probably seen this, and you're not going to be surprised by which one I've chosen. So let's go ahead and watch the clip, and that'll set the stage for the rest of the night. The world is and the darkness. Guys, we're in a game that it's going to take beyond uncommon men. I mean, the good news is we got the power of Jesus Christ in us, guys, and we can move forward. And here's what I want to share with us as we head into tonight. And this is Mike knows me well enough to know I'm not saying what it maybe sounds like I'm saying. This is not about Vital Men. This is not about Mike Serig's team. This is not about Third Church, Calvary Church, First Federated Church. We got to figure out whose team we're on and figure out he's already won the victory, guys. And we got to go into a dark, dark world that's hurting and be ready to go to battle. And know that when you pull on your jersey, you're not pulling on a United States jersey in this context. You're pulling on the jersey of a victorious Jesus Christ team. And so I want us to move into that, because last week we talked about Old Testament stuff and no more excuses, if I could summarize just real quickly what I got out of it. So now we're going to move to the New Testament, and I want you to turn in your Bibles with me to the book of Mark, and I would like you to turn particularly to Mark 4, and our text and verses we're going to look at kind of slowly and methodically go through is Mark 4, verse 35, and then we're going to go all the way through chapter 5 and verse 20. And that's a fairly familiar story. It's actually found in various forms in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So as we get rolling through it, it will sound very familiar to you. And I'm going to come from a little different perspective with some of the Bible scholars that I was studying the last couple of weeks that brought a new perspective of this whole thing to me that I hope to share. And maybe it will cause you to do a little thinking and go a little deeper than just another story that you've read multiple times. But before we do that, one of the things that I've been learning in how to study the Bible is always take it in context to where it is in relation to what's before it and after it. So without going into lots and lots of details, if you guys look back into chapter 4, look at what Jesus has been teaching to the multitudes. We have several parables with the same basic type theme. We got the very familiar parable of the sower, where there's good soil, bad soil, rocky soil, and the throwing of the seeds and what that is all about. Then you have, a little bit later on, you can see the heading there in chapter 21, a lamp on a stand and being bright and not hiding it and going out. Then you got the parable of a growing seed, which in a nutshell is if a seed is to grow, it needs to die into itself and all of that. Then we go to where we're going to go as far as chapter or verse 35. And here's what's kind of interesting. That day, when evening came, he said to the disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Here's where things took an interesting twist for me from some different scholars that I was reading this past week. The other side is not just, according to these guys, is not just the other side. It's not like just going to the other side of Lake Red Rock. The other side, if you understood Jewish culture, if you understood the historical context, if you kind of knew what was going on in that area, here are some things you need to know about the other side. The other side was a region of Decapolis, which I probably just butchered, which is where there's the 10 cities. Anybody know, just for the fun of it, what one of those 10 cities would have been? Thank you, Arvin. Ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner. Pella would have been one of those 10 cities, along with Philadelphia and some of the other cities that we maybe have heard through the line. Here's some other facts that you need to know, kind of what, as far as the other side, because it sets the stage for everything that I'm going to talk about tonight. The other side is where it is believed that the 7 nations of Canaan had settled. In a nutshell, it was and it represented everything that Israel was not. For example, the pig, the most unclean animal in Israel culture and their background, it was actually regarded as sacred and used in worship on the other side. The Jews regarded the other side as where Satan lived. It was dark, it was evil, it was demonic, it was just as bad could be. So I'm sitting there trying to picture what the other side might be in my world. It also housed a legion of Roman soldiers, and a legion would be about 6,000 Roman soldiers. And anybody want to care to guess what the symbol of a Roman legion would have been? A boar's head. So you got sacred boar, sacred pig, using them in worship, everything that, you know, the Israelites were everything about a pig being unclean and all of that. So here's kind of the interesting thing right out of the chute. Can you imagine the response or the look? Again, you know, we kind of brush through some of these stories, and can you imagine it would be, I don't even know what it would be like in today's world of Jesus just, you know, here they are, got crowds, they got things happening, he's talking and teaching in parables. Again, the context of what he just talked about, and he says, let's go to the other side. You got to figure those guys looked at each other and thought, what is he thinking? Where is he taking us? So let's keep reading here. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" You know, it's kind of interesting. Here's kind of the way my mind worked. What do you think Jesus... Do you think Jesus knew that there was going to be a storm coming? If so, why would he have slept? What was he trying to teach there? These might be some interesting discussion points at your table as you kind of figure out how to, why would, if he knew there was a storm coming, and if these guys were the fishermen they claimed to be, don't you think they'd ever run into rough seas before? Why would they have freaked out so much this time? I don't know if I have great answers, but those are just some things that kind of came to my mind as we move forward. He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" I'm going to read that one again because that's going to come back and apply to each of us. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." They went across the lake to the region of Gerasenes, and when Jesus got out of the boat, the man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one can bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day along the tombs and in the hills he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." For Jesus was saying to him, "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on a nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. We'll kind of summarize just for the sake of time. The people who were tending kind of freaked out. The people did not necessarily like it. They basically asked Jesus to leave. Even after seeing a man that they had known was, by our definition, crazed with who knows what. Here's an interesting thing I thought to kind of wrap it up. As Jesus was getting into the boat, verse 18, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your family, tell them how much the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. So here's what's kind of interesting. We have this other side, and I read a great quote by I can't even remember, and I apologize. So you know it didn't come from me. That's as good as I can get. But he said, there's no us or them in Jesus' world. He said, it's perfect, not perfect, holy, sinful. All of us are on the same side. The wrong side without Jesus. And I think in my life, quite often, having grown up in a church, and this is just a sin that I battle, and I'm guessing, knowing a lot of you and knowing you come from very similar backgrounds, there's always a little bit of an us and them syndrome to the way we live our Christian walk. And I've shared before where I feel, I always love it when I preach to myself on these nights. I've shared before that, one of my greatest fears is God's going to call me to some place like Sheraton. It's a them. How's that for being very revealing? Or a place like Osceola, or a place like, I'm sure you can probably name cities that might be the other side for you. But it's interesting that the power of one, the guy who stays home, or stays back because Jesus doesn't allow him, so he stays back. So here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to find, so what happens? And again, after having read these stories so many times, let's bump ahead a couple of chapters. If you guys go with me to like chapter 6 in Mark, you will see, let's go to chapter 7. Sorry about that. Chapter 7, kind of like in verse 31. I got to turn the page one more time. Then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went to Sidon, went down to the Sea of the Galilee and into the region of Decapolis. So we're back there again. There, some people brought a man to whom was deaf. If you keep reading, there was crowds that people came with, people that were hurting, people that needed healing. It actually became, because of the power of one man's witness, one of the most fertile grounds where the seed had been scattered. And I thought that was just interesting. The power of one could bring that. And here was another interesting thing. And I'll just say it because I just thought it was an interesting scholar's perspective. You know, you've got a couple of different stories of the feeding of the multitudes. And one of which you can find in Mark 6, verse 30, which is where Jesus is actually feeding people on the good side of the lake. He feeds the 5,000, and if you read that in Mark 6, verse 30, you would find out how many basketfuls were left over. Anybody got that? Anybody got a guess? 12. Okay, so I've been learning to pay attention. I'm not trying to make more out of this than what, but this is what one of the scholars is suggesting. How many tribes of Israel are there? 12. More than enough for Israel. Okay, if you go to the second feeding of the multitudes in Mark 7, we're back on the bad side of the lake, if you will. He feeds there after healing many. How many basketfuls are left over there? Anybody got it for me? 7. Anybody remember how many nations of Canaan were there? 7. More than enough for Jewish, more than enough for pagan. That's what Jesus brings. I thought that was kind of interesting. Kind of interesting. And I think that's the power that we can go forward with. That's the power that we can go forward with. So what I want to do is I want to show another clip that comes a little bit later on in the movie Miracle. Set this up. Here we are. We've made it through the medal rounds, and we are now looking at facing the Soviet Union team. And as the clip starts, one of the things that I want you to notice is look at the faces and the tension and what's on the faces of some of these young men as they're in the locker room preparing to go into a battle that they literally have been told and have probably believed all their lives it's an unwinnable battle. And I want you to maybe put yourself into, all right, where's Jesus calling me? Where's my other side? And I want you to just watch this, and then we'll kind of wrap things up and send you guys out. This is our time. Guys, we were born to do one thing, and that's to bring glory to the kingdom of God. Each one of us has been given special gifts. We've been equipped, just like those guys were equipped and brought special things to the table. Each one of us. And you know what? Just like that coach, I am sick and tired of the devil thinking he's got an advantage and he's winning. Guys, it's time for us to be kingdom men, to be vital men, and to step into it. You got to go into it knowing that, you know what? It is our time. It's time for great things to happen. It's time for us to go and shine a light where we never would have thought we would walk into. I don't know what your other side might be. For me, I got to tell you, it's the guy sitting right next to me. He's about 4 feet away from me with a wall between us. It may be as simple as that for you, but it's time. We got to do it because that's what we're all called to do. So as you look at, you know what? I love it that Mark shared tonight. You know what? If you leave here with nothing else, honestly, I hope you have great table discussion. I hope you dig deep, and I hope you challenge each other, and I hope you do whatever you need to do. But if nothing else, if you feel something tugging and you're not sure where your other side might be, golly, what a night to tap into these prayer ministers. Start begging the Lord to show you maybe what that is. Start begging Him to show you what it might look like. Ask Him to continue to fill you with the Spirit, to do the things that are way uncomfortable. Because victory's ours. Let's go for it. Go ahead and spend some time at your tables.